Okay guys, so I'm going to take a little break from wrestling reviews and talk about another thing that I love to talk about in sports, and it's baseball. I've been following baseball since I was about 5 years old. I know statistics and history of baseball probably any more than a lot of people my age should or even can think about knowing. Um, I try to study the game as much as I can, especially now where I can actually understand it more, and I'm not playing as much as I used to. Um, Compared to wrestling for baseball, it's about the same for about knowledge. I would say baseball is a little bit higher compared to wrestling, but I've been following since about the same time. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to do a similar to the top 10 that the MLB Network type does, but it's going to be more what I see compared to the shredder or statistics and whatnot. I'm going to do it from a fan's perspective and who I'd want to take the ball in a situation in a game 1 or a game 7. I'm going to start with the top 10 right-handed pitchers right now in the major leagues. I compiled this list based on many different things, and I'll explain why each person is in the spot they are as I go down the list from 10 to 1. Alright, so I will start with Detroit Tigers right-handed pitcher Anibal Sanchez. I think Anibal Sanchez does get overlooked in the major leagues right now. He is probably one of the best. If he would to leave Detroit, and this is my honest statement, if he would to leave Detroit, he would be a solid. He may be a 1A, or on some teams he'd be even a number 1, because he is one of the most consistent pitchers in baseball since he's left Miami, and even when he was in Miami or Florida when he was with them, he was a very consistent pitcher who never, if I'm looking at stats right now, he only had 2 years, where he was under, and it was but his ERAs in all those years were no more than 3.8. So, Anibal Sanchez is a guy who every year, and it's not like he's getting hurt or any serious shoulder injuries, which I like in pitchers very much, is he's very consistent. He's not a big game winner. Like, he's not like a guy like Verlander, Scherzer, who's going to get you 20 wins a season. But since he's moved to Detroit, which yes, there's something to do with the offense, whatever. But his ERA is still in the threes. He's still getting a lot of strikeouts. He's more of a ground ball type pitcher. And we saw it in the playoffs this year. He almost no-hit the champion Boston Red Sox in Game 1 of the ALCS. Or Game 3. One of those games that I'm for some reason spacing out on the game. He almost threw a no-hitter against the Boston Red Sox. He's already thrown one in his career. I mean, when you have a guy on the team where he's the number 3 on a team with Verlander and Scherzer ahead of him, it's pretty remarkable to think about. Anibal Sanchez is a guy that I definitely, a small market team or maybe a mid-market team would be their number 1. On a big market team like a Detroit, like a Red Sox, like a Yankees, he is a solid 2. It's just on a weird situation like he is right now. He has the 2 former Cy Young winners and MVP and Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer ahead of him. And I think honestly that's the reason I have him at 10 is he is very overlooked, and I thought that he would be a guy that if I was the GM I would go after immediately if he was available. I love the longevity, like I said, and he's a guy that you always know what you're going to get year to year. You don't have to worry about a guy having a really down year, or maybe he's having a great year, which everybody loves, but he's not going to have a really down year where it's going to kill you. So moving on to number 9. My first young guy on this list is Jordan Zimmermann from the Washington Nationals. Jordan Zimmermann this is his second season, where he's really branched out and not been a young pitcher as much. In 2012 he went 12-8. That's not bad for a guy with his situation he was in. This year though, he broke out. He went 19-9, and Jordan Zimmermann, yes, he gets overshadowed by the fact that the Nationals have Steven Strasburg and Gio Gonzalez. This is what I'm going to say to you. I think Jordan Zimmermann, as a pitcher, I'd rather have him starting than Steven Strasburg, because Steven Strasburg, yes, he does have great strikeout ratios. His ERA is fairly good. Jordan Zimmermann's ERA is actually better than Strasburg's, and he gets way more W's than Strasburg. Yes, W's are not the greatest stat anymore. I understand that because of the analytics and all those things like that. Other thing I like about Jordan Zimmermann is he's not a guy who's going to get hurt. Yes, he had Tommy John surgery a few years back, but ever since then you've not had to worry about a single thing that he has had. He's not had any elbow, shoulder, any injuries like that. I actually think this kid is getting better. 19 wins, that you can't just shy away from that. Let's be honest here. He should have been in the NL Cy Young candidacy, but for some reason he was not. That actually really upset me because I think he ultimately deserved it, even though he was on a Nationals team which very underperformed. Jordan Zimmermann's another guy, like Anibal Sanchez, who gets overlooked because of the guys in his rotation. Jordan Zimmermann is a guy like Anibal Sanchez. Yes, he hasn't been around as long as Anibal, but Jordan Zimmermann has put up stats that are very equivalent to a number one. And if he came to a big market team, like I said, like Sanchez, he'd be a solid number 2 or a 1A because of how good he pitches and what he does when the game's on the line. Another thing I think that helps Zimmermann over Sanchez is the fact that he is younger and he is more affordable, but that's not what I'm trying to talk about here. But Jordan Zimmermann, I think, is a guy who maybe in the next 1 or 2 years, should have been this year, in the Cy Young competition, and for many years more to come. Moving on to number 8. I had a hard time placing this guy in Matt Harvey from the New York Mets. I have a really hard time putting this guy in my top 10 because I haven't seen the longevity and I haven't seen him do it for more than 1 year. Yes, I understand that he had a great year and he was dominant. He started the All-Star game as a rookie. That is amazing. And he was on a New York Mets team that sucked. But I just can't put him any higher than 8 just because we haven't seen him do it for more than 1 year. And not only that, he had Tommy John surgery. We don't know what he's going to be like when he comes back. And, I mean, he could be stronger. I mean, this guy, if he doesn't get hurt, we're talking about a guy who's in the Cy Young competition this year. Instead, we don't get him at all this year. And we don't know what we're going to get when he comes back. I have a lot of question marks when it comes to Harvey. I thought his motion wouldn't cause a Tommy John, but now these days where all these guys are throwing 98 and 100 miles per hour, it happens. So Matt Harvey is a guy who is going to climb up boards on the top 10s list at pitchers, but I just can't put him higher than 8 on the right-handed pitchers just because I have not seen it for more than 1 season, and I don't know if it's a fluke season, as much as I don't want to say that, but he could be like a Mark Pryor or a Kerry Wood who had a great 1 year and then gets hurt and then we never see or hear from again. And that's just the sad reality of it, and that's how sometimes baseball is. Moving on to number 6. Los Angeles Dodgers right-handed pitcher Zack Greinke. Zack Greinke is a former Cy Young winner, and he is a guy who the only reason why he's not a number 1 is because of Clayton Kershaw. Let's be honest here. Zack Greinke is a guy who had a great year after leaving Kansas City and then leaving Los Angeles Angels to go to the Dodgers. He went 15-4 this year with a 2.63 ERA. I mean, this guy had a phenomenal season. Yes, he got paid a lot, and he lived up, I think, to most of that money. He's a guy who's an ace on any team, except for the fact that you have the best left-handed pitcher in baseball in Clayton Kershaw on that team as well. Zack Greinke is a guy who's been very consistent. He does not get hurt. He is a guy who goes out there, gets his 28 to 34 starts a season. He will give you solid innings every single year. I think he's gone over 200 innings at least 3 times. I may be wrong on that, but he's a guy who does not give up many long balls, which is another big stat. And his whip is never high, ever. Even when he was in Kansas City, he was still not getting lit up. He was still a guy who was dominating. It's just he could not get W's because of his team. And then when he went to the Angels, kind of the same situation a bit. He did not dominate as well as he did with the Dodgers, greatly for the Dodgers, but he was still dominant to the point where he'd be a 1 or a 1A on a team like he is now. Zack Greinke is a guy who may be in this Cy Young competition. I don't see it as much as Zimmermann, Harvey, and those type of guys, just because he is not as young as these guys, and he has to deal with Kershaw being in his same rotation as him every single week. So I think Zack Greinke could be a guy that moves up on my board here in the next year, but as of right now, I see him at number 6 just because I want to see more of what he does next year with the Dodgers and reevaluate where he could be possibly next year. Moving on to number 5. I'm on 6. Excuse me. My counting is what it is. I have a very interesting choice here in Jose Fernandez. Yes, I said the same things about Matt Harvey as I did Fernandez, but this is the difference between Fernandez and Harvey. Jose Fernandez went 12-6 on a team like the Miami Marlins and had 2.19 ERA, where he was in the Cy Young competition. He was probably the most dominant pitcher in the National League besides Clayton Kershaw. It's very hard to say what the future holds for him. If he pitches like this guy is going to take Cy Young awards from Clayton Kershaw and Adam Wainwright and guys like that. Jose Fernandez is a guy who I absolutely love. This guy is amazing. He is very young. He throws the ball extremely hard. He has amazing off-speed pitches. And ultimately, I just think this guy is going to be a stud and be the #1 pitcher on the right-handed side in the next few years, and eventually be #1 for multiple years. The Miami Marlins definitely got a diamond in the rough with Jose Fernandez. They got very lucky that they get to get this guy on the bump every 5 days. I'm very interested to see how he does next year, where teams adapt to him and how he adapts to them. If he adapts to them very nicely and has a year like he did this year, I could see him possibly starting the NL All-Star game next year, along possibly with Kershaw. Moving on, my next guy on my list is King Felix of the Seattle Mariners. King Felix is a guy who does not usually get much love because he is in Seattle, but he's a guy who every year has an amazing ERA. He just does not get the W's. And yes, the W's and ERAs and things like that are overlooked, but this guy is phenomenal. If he is on a team like the Red Sox, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Braves, teams like that, Tigers, like teams that win 90 games a year, Felix Hernandez would have 20 to 25 wins a season. This guy has the worst luck possible being in Seattle. Like, hopefully this year he gets to the point where he can win more games. Every year he's out there at least getting 30 starts. He does not get injured ever. This guy's longevity is ridiculous. He goes out there and throws over 200 innings every year. That is amazing, especially now where guys get yanked after the 6th inning or 100 pitches, which I think is awful in baseball. King Felix is a guy who I think, with the right situation like Seattle, possibly now, he could possibly move up into the Cy Young competition like he was when he won it. He's a guy who could go 1 year to 2 ERA, and you think he's having an off year when he gets in the 3s. That's ultimately crazy to me, that somebody would think somebody's having an off year when their ERA reaches 3. That's amazing to me. King Felix's strikeout ratio is amazing, and King Felix is a guy that, if I was a GM, I would trade my whole farm system to get if I was on a big market team. That's a little crazy to think about, but I would do it in a heartbeat just because of my fascination with the guy and how great of a pitcher he really is. Next on my list is AL Cy Young winner Max Scherzer. Max Scherzer, the reason I don't have him as high as everybody else does in the baseball industry right now is because of the fact that there is a guy on his team that is actually better. Max Scherzer is a guy who went 21-3 this year. Yes, wins are probably a factor because of the fact that he had Prince Fielder, Miguel Cabrera, and guys like that on that team. But at the same time, you have to be pretty damn dominant to get 21 wins and only lose 3 times. I think it's at the point now where Scherzer has understood his mechanics, and if he actually has a year, I'm not going to say he's going to win 20 games a year and lose 3 games. That's ridiculous to even put up like a comparison on a guy like that, because that's just not fair. But for Scherzer, if he comes back, wins 15 to 18 games, maybe loses 5 to 10, stay in that ratio, has a under 3 ERA and has a strikeout ratio like he did last year, Max Scherzer is going to get a lot of money from a team. I hope it's the Tigers. I hope he stays there. But he's a guy that I think could ultimately be, unfortunately for him, he has the teammate that's a better right-handed pitcher than him, but I think he is a guy who really has finally put the pieces together and is really one of the most dominant right-handed pitchers in the game. Moving on to a guy who has only been in the league for 2 seasons, and that is Texas right-handed pitcher Darvish. Darvish I honestly was skeptical when he first came from Japan. I didn't think he was going to be great. I will be the first to admit that. But Yu Darvish actually is very well surprised me because he came into Texas. First year he won 16 games. This year he only won 13. But his ERA dropped to 2.83 compared to 3.90. He stayed with the same loss rate, but I'm not going to worry about that. His innings actually went up to over 200, which I love. He is an ace now on that Texas team. That guy is learning how to pitch in the major leagues and how to do it effectively. The only thing I knock on Darvish, and it really annoys me, and I'm sure it annoys other major league people because I've heard them talk about it, he, for some reason, does not like going to his fastball. His fastball is 96 miles per hour, and he does this off-speed pitch thing where he loves to just throw off-speed. And ultimately, that's what's going to get him out of games in the 6th inning, and that's what worries me about Darvish, is that he is a guy who loves his off-speed so much that he doesn't maybe he understands this, but he needs to recuperate more of his fastball, and maybe he can be more of a guy like a Justin Verlander and be one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. Yes, he is one of the most dominant right-handed pitchers in baseball, but he could elevate himself into the top 5 pitchers in baseball, not just right-handed. Moving on to number 2 to update the list, because I know I haven't in a while, is St. Louis Cardinals pitcher Adam Wainwright. Adam Wainwright is pretty much the type of guy that, alright, Adam Wainwright's on our team, we're going to get 30 to 34 starts a season, he's going to get us 10 to 20 wins a season. He is a guy that you want on your team in the playoffs. He is a guy that you want pitching Game 7 every single time if you're on that situation. Adam Wainwright had that one year where he was injured, but he came back, and he came back with a vengeance. He's a former 20-game winner, 2-time 19-game winner. His ERA was a 2.94. The last 3 seasons, just looking at the stats right now, he went 2.94, 3.94, 2.42, 2.63. When a guy has more years in the 2s than 3s in his career, that composes dominance right there. He's a guy who will go over 230 innings every single season. Not many guys do that anymore either. And Adam Wainwright is a guy who, if the Cardinals do not have Adam Wainwright, they do not make the World Series in the last years that they have, or even won it in 2006. Even though he was not much of a big player in that, he was also the guy that closed that out. Let's not forget that. Also, they would not have made it to the World Series in 2007 without him going 14-12, and they would not have definitely won it when they got there in that year. And they definitely wouldn't have gotten to this year without him going 19-9 and leading a staff of very young pitchers, may I might add that, into the World Series. And moving on to the number 1 pitcher on the right-handed side, no shocker here, I've mentioned him multiple times in this video, Justin Verlander. Justin Verlander is number 1 for 2 reasons. 1, he is on watch every single night. You know that when Verlander's pitching, everybody stops for a second and checks the game to see if it's a no-hitter. Nobody has done that since Nolan Ryan on the bump and has everybody's attention to a no-hitter every single time he steps on that mound. That is ridiculous to think about, that a guy is that good, that every single time he has the possibility of throwing a no-hitter. It's amazing. Justin Verlander, to actually think he had a bad year this year, he really didn't. He went 13-12, yes, the losses were up, the ERA was a little bit higher. He still had his longevity with the starts and innings. But if you look, every single year before that, minus a couple of his first 2 years, he has been dominant. Every single time he touches him out, every single batter on that other team has to rethink everything because Justin Verlander is pitching against us. He is a force of nature. He is a guy that I would want on my team, and if I could, I'd pitch him every single game, if that was even possible, because he is that dominant and he is that good. Justin Verlander is the best right-handed pitcher in baseball. Some people may argue this, but in my opinion, he is. Now, to get to the point of my opinion, it's a fan's perspective. Yes, I don't have any using analytics or anything like that. I'm doing things from what I see from the eye test on the best pitchers in baseball. I voted for Justin Verlander to be number 1 from the things I've seen and how dominant he really is. And like I said, that no-hit watch is a serious thing. And the fact that he is the only guy since Nolan Ryan to be like that is amazing. This is my top 10 right-handed pitchers in the major leagues as of 2014 going into that season. List any comments or questions you have about it, or if you think my rankings are incorrect and you want to come up with a different rankings, I will gladly listen to your opinions and see where it goes from there. But until then, I will be doing a wrestling review coming up this week for Monday Night Raw, so look forward to that. Also, I will try to do another position coming up in the next week. I will move to the left-handed side for starting pitchers and go from there. Peace out.